Good morning, everyone. Our report for today is about the cost volume profit relationships. Planning and control. Planning involves developing objectives and preparing various budgets to achieve these objectives, while control involves the steps taken by management that attempt to ensure the objectives are attained. Before we start, let me first read to you the learning outcomes. First, explain how changes in activity affect contribution margin and net operating income. Second, prepare and interpret a cost volume profit or CVP graph and a profit graph. Third, use the contribution margin ratio or CM ratio to compute changes in contribution margin and net operating income resulting from changes in sales volume. Fourth, show the effects on net operating income of changes in variable costs, fixed costs, selling price, and volume. Fifth, determine the break-even point. Sixth, determine the level of sales needed to achieve a desired target profit. Seventh, compute the margin of safety and explain its significance. 8. Compute the degree of operating leverage at a particular level of sales and explain how it can be used to predict changes in net operating income. Lastly, compute the break-even point for a multi-product company and explain the effects of shifts in the sales mix on contribution margin and the break-even point. Cost volume profit or CVP analysis helps managers make many important decisions, such as what products and services to offer, what price to charge, what marketing strategy to use, and what cost structure to maintain. It also helps managers understand the interrelationship among cost, volume, and profit by focusing their attention on the interactions among the prices of products, volume of activity, per unit variable cost, total fixed cost, and mix of products sold. It is a vital tool used in many business decisions, such as deciding what products to manufacture or sell, what pricing policy to follow, what marketing strategy to employ, and what type of productive facilities to acquire. Basics of cost volume profit analysis. The contribution income statement is helpful to managers in judging the impact on profits of changes in selling price, cost, or volume. For example, let's look at a hypothetical contribution income statement for Fifth Racing Bicycle Company or RBC. Notice the emphasis on the cost behavior. Variable costs are separate from fixed costs. The contribution margin is defined as the amount remaining from sales revenue after variable expenses have been deducted. Contribution margin is used first to cover fixed expenses. Any remaining contribution margin contributes to net operating income. Learning objective number 1 is to explain how changes in activity affect contribution margin and net operating income. Sales, variable expenses, and contribution margin can also be expressed on a per unit basis. If Fifth Racing sells an additional bicycle, 200 pesos additional contribution margin will be generated to cover fixed expenses and profit. Each month, Fifth Racing must generate at least 80,000 pesos in total contribution margin to break even, which is the level of sales at which profit is zero. If Fifth Racing sells 400 units in a month, it will be operating at the break-even point. Total sales will be 400 units times 500 pesos each or 200,000 pesos, and total variable expenses will be 400 units times 300 pesos each for 120,000 pesos. Contribution margin is exactly equal to total fixed expenses. Let's see what happens if Fifth Racing sells one more bike or a total of 401 bikes. If Fifth Racing sells one more bike or a total of 401 bikes, net operating income will increase by 200 pesos. You can see that the sale of one unit above the break-even point yields net operating income of 200 pesos, which is the contribution margin per unit sold. The contribution format income statement can be expressed as profit is equal to sales less variable expenses or contribution margin less fixed costs. Let's use the equation to calculate profit assuming Racing Bicycle sells 401 units at 500 pesos each. The company has variable expenses of 300 pesos per unit sold and total fixed expenses of 80,000 pesos. Sales is equal to 200,500 pesos. That is 401 units sold at 500 pesos per unit. Variable expenses is 120,300 pesos. 401 units sold at 300 pesos per unit. With fixed expenses of 80,000 pesos, we can see that profit or net operating income is equal to 200 pesos. Exactly the same answer we got using the contribution income statement approach. We do not need to prepare an income statement to estimate profits at a particular sales volume. Simply multiply the number of units sold above break-even by the contribution margin per unit. If Fifth Racing sells 430 bikes, its net operating income will be 6,000 pesos. If we develop equations to calculate break-even and net income, we will not have to prepare an income statement to determine what net income will be at any level of sales. For example, we know that if Fifth Racing Bicycle sells 430 units, net operating income will be 6,000 pesos. The company will sell 30 units above the break-even unit sales, and the contribution margin is 200 pesos per unit or 6,000 pesos. Learning objective number 2 is to prepare and interpret a cost-volume profit or CVP graph and a profit. The relationship among revenue, cost, profit, and volume can be expressed graphically by preparing a CVP graph. Racing developed contribution margin income statement at 300, 400, and 500 units sold. We will use these informations to prepare the CVP graph. In a CVP graph, unit volume is usually represented on the horizontal or x-axis and pesos on the vertical or y-axis. In units, the first step begins by drawing a line parallel to the volume axis to represent total fixed expenses of 80,000 pesos. Choose some sales volume, say 400 units, and plot the point representing total expenses or fixed and variable. In profit area, the case of Fifth Racing Bicycle, break-even is 400 bikes sold or sales revenue of 200,000 pesos. The profit or loss at any given sales level is measured between the total revenue and the total expenses lines, or in loss area units. An even simpler form of the CVP graph is called the profit graph. The graph is based on the equation profit equals unit contribution margin times quantity sold less total fixed cost. To build the graph, plot two profit or loss points, in our case 300 units and 500 units sold, and connect them with a straight line. As you can see, the break-even point where profit is equal to 0 is at 400 bicycles sold. This is the profit graph of our Fifth Racing Bicycle Company. The next topic will be discussed by Miss Lovelyjoy Concha.
Thank you, Miss Balabala. Learning objective number 3 is to use contribution margin ratio to compute changes in contribution margin and in net operating income resulting from changes in sales volume. The contribution margin ratio is calculated by dividing the total contribution margin by total sales. In the case of Racing Bicycle, the ratio is 40%. Thus, each 1 peso increase in sales results in the total contribution margin increase of 40. 100,000 pesos divided 250,000 pesos is equal to 40%. The contribution margin ratio can also be calculated by dividing the contribution margin per unit by the selling price per unit. Racing Bicycles has a contribution margin ratio of 40%. This means that each dollar increase in sales, the company will produce 40 in contribution margin. Contribution margin ratio If racing bicycle increases sales by 50,000 pesos, contribution margin will increase by 20,000 pesos. 50,000 pesos times 40%. Here is the proof. If 50,000 pesos increase in sales revenue results in a 20,000 increase in contribution margin, 50,000 times 40% is equal to 20,000 pesos. Let's see. The relationship between profit and contribution margin ratio can be expressed using the following equation. Profit is equal to contribution margin ratio times sales minus fixed expenses. If racing bicycle increased its sales volume to 500 bikes, what would management expect profit or net operating income to be? And part 1. The relationship between profit and contribution margin ratio can be expressed using the following equation. Profit equals contribution margin ratio times sales less fixed expenses. In part 2, if racing bicycle reported sales of 250,000 pesos, what would management expect net operating profits to be? In part 3, as you can see, the expected net operating profit is 20,000. Profit is equal to 40% times 250,000 pesos minus 80,000 pesos. Profit is equal to 100,000 pesos minus 80,000 pesos. Profit is equal to 20,000 pesos. 20,000 pesos is the profit or the final answer of this problem.
The next topic is show the effects on net operating income of changes in variable costs, fixed costs, selling price, and volume. We have here a given example or a problem. What is the profit impact if Fifth Racing can increase unit sales from 500 to 540 by increasing the monthly advertising budget of 10,000? So, we can see here the format of an income statement. Fifth Racing Bicycle Company contribution income statement for the month of June. First column, we have sales revenue less variable expenses, contribution margin less fixed expenses, and net income. For the second column, we have current sales, 500 bikes, sales revenue of 250,000 less 150,000 equals 100,000 minus fixed expenses 80,000 equals net income of 20,000. In the third column, we have projected sales for 540 bikes. We have sales revenue of 270,000 minus 162,000 equals contribution margin of 108,000 less 90,000 equals net income of 18,000. So the sales increased by 20,000 but net operating income decreased by 2,000. If you want an easier solution, we have a shortcut to get the answer. Increase in CM, 40 units times 200 equals 8,000. Increase in advertising expenses, 10,000. Decrease in net operating income equals 2,000. The next problem is what is the profit impact if Fifth Racing can use higher quality raw materials, thus increasing variable costs per unit 10 pesos to generate an increase to unit sales from 500 to 580. We have to multiply 580 times 310 and the answer is 179,800. Again, we have here the income statement. Fifth Racing Bicycle Company, contribution income statement for the month of June. For current sales, we have sales revenue of 250,000, less variable expenses of 150,000, contribution margin of 100,000, less fixed expenses 80,000 equals net income of 20,000. For projected sales, we have sales revenue of 290,000 less variable expenses 179,800 equals contribution margin 110,200 less fixed expenses of 80,000 equals net income of 30,300. The next problem is, what is the profit impact if Fifth Racing first cut its selling price 20 per unit, second increases its advertising budget by 15,000 per month, and third increases unit sales from 500 to 650 units per month. Again, we have here the income statement. Fifth Racing Bicycle, which is the company's name, contribution income statement for the month of June. So we can see here that the units of current sale still the same 500, but in projected sales it becomes 650 bikes. So there are changes for the amount of sales revenue to net income for projected sales. So we have 312,000 minus 195,000 equals 117,000 minus 95,000 equals 22,000. So sales increase by 62,000, fixed cost increases by 15,000, and net operating income increases by 2,000. The next problem is, what is the profit impact if Fifth Racing first pays a 15 sales commission per bike sold instead of paying salespersons flat salaries that currently total 6,000 per month, and second increases unit sales from 500 to 575 bikes. In the income statement, again we can see the changes of unit sales for projected sales, which is 575 bikes. The amounts of projected sales from sales revenue to net income has changed, which is 287,500 minus 181,125 equals 106,375 minus 74,000 equals 32,375. Sales increase by 37,500. Variable cost increases by 31,125, but fixed expenses decreases by 61,000. Increase in CM 75 units times 85 equals 6,375. Reduce fixed cost equals 6,000. Increase in net operating income 6,375 plus 6,000 equals 12,375. Lastly, if Fifth Racing has an opportunity to sell 150 bikes to a wholesaler without disturbing sale to other customers or fixed expenses, what price would it quote to the wholesaler if it wants to increase monthly profits by 3,000? So here is the solution. 3,000 divided by 150 bikes equals 20 pesos per bike. Variable cost per bike is 300 per bike. Selling price required 320 per bike. 300 plus 20. 150 bike times 320 per bike equals 48,000. Total variable costs is 45,000. So equals increase in net income is 3,000 only.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. The next topic is all about determining the break-even point. Break-even analysis can be approached in two ways. First, equation method. Second, contribution margin method. Equation method: profit equals sales minus variable expenses minus fixed expenses, or sales equals variable expenses plus fixed expenses plus profits. At the break-even point, profits equals 0. Equation method: here is the information from fifth racing bicycle. Example: sales 500 bikes, total 250,000, per unit is 500, percent is 100%. Less variable expenses, total is 150,000, per unit is 300, percent is 60%. Contribution margin is total is 100,000, per unit is 200, percent is 40%. Less fixed expenses is 80,000. Net operating income is 20,000. We calculate the break-even point as follows. Sales equals variable expenses plus fixed expenses plus profit. 500Q equals 300Q, 80,000 plus 0, where Q equals number of bikes sold, 500 unit selling price, 300 equals unit variable expenses, 80,000 equals total fixed expense. We calculate the break-even point as follows. Sales equals variable expenses plus fixed expenses plus profit. 500Q equals 300Q plus 80,000 plus 0. 200Q equals 80,000. Q equals 80,000 divide 200 per bike. Q equals 400 bikes. Let's use the contribution margin method to calculate the break-even point in total sales pesos at fifth racing. Break-even point in total sales peso. Fixed expenses divide CM ratio. 80,000 divide 40% equals 200,000 break-even sales. Jolt is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49, and the average variable expense per cup is $0.36. The average expense per month is $1,300. 2,100 cups are the sold each month on average. What is the break-even sales in units? The solution is break-even point in units sold equals fixed expenses divide unit contribution margin equals $1,300 divide $1.49 per cup minus $0.36 per cup, and the answer is 1,150 cups. The break-even sales in dollars. The solution is break-even point in units sold equals fixed expenses divide CM ratio equals $1,300 divide 0.758. The answer is $1,715.
Thank you, Ms. Manlimos. Learning objective number 6 of chapter 5 is to determine the level of sales needed to attain a target profit. What is target profit analysis? It is about finding out the estimated business activities to perform and to earn a target profit during a certain period of time. We can use any of the following methods to do the target profit analysis. And these methods are equation method, formula method, and the percentage method. We can compute the number of units that must be sold to attain a target profit using either the equation method or the formula method. And the formulas are presented in the slide. And also, it will be tackled after this slide. The equation method is based on the contribution approach income statement. The equation we have used is that profit equals unit CM or contribution margin multiplied by the units sold, which is the Q, less fixed expenses. Our goal here is to solve for the unknown Q, which represents the quantity of units that must be sold to attain the target profit. We have here an example. Suppose Fifth Racing Bicycle Management wants to know how many bikes must be sold to earn a target profit of 100,000 pesos. Since we know the problem already, ato na i-apply ang values sa formula. For the profit, it is given sa problem, it is equal to 100,000 pesos. For the unit contribution margin, ang value given here sa slide is given na sa akong mga teammates in the previous slide. So we have here the 200 pesos for the unit contribution margin multiplied by the quantity and less fixed expenses, which is equal to 80,000 pesos na given gihapon sa previous slide with my teammates. So for the computation, so naa siya sa baba kanang blue. So we have here the 100,000, which is the profit, the 200 ng unit CM multiplied by Q, which is not given, minus or subtract to 80,000 nga fixed expenses. So we need to transfer the 80,000 to the other side for us to find the Q. So we need to add 80,000 sa 100,000. So it is equal to 180,000. Then equal to 200 times Q. So for us to find the Q, we need to divide the 180 sa 200 para mo equal siya sa Q. So here you can see sa slide nga 900 ang quantity of units. So 900 ka bikes ang kailangan for us to earn a target profit of 100,000. Para ma-sure na to nga sakto atong answer nga 900, we need to verify it. So naa sa gilid. Sa pag-verify, we just need to substitute all the values given. So profit is equal to unit CM times Q minus fixed expenses. So profit is equal to 200 multiplied by 900 minus 80,000. So the answer is 100,000, which is correct. Nasa sa problem kay mao ang target profit nga 100,000. We have here another example niya. Ang atong gamiton nga method is equation method gihapon pero for the sales required. So the problem here is, suppose Fifth Racing Bicycle Management wants to know the sales volume that must be generated to earn a target profit of 100,000. So the formula for this equation is profit is equal to contribution margin ratio multiplied by sales less fixed expenses. So for the application, we have 100,000 for the profit, CM ratio 40% given with my teammates sa previous nga slide, and multiplied by sales, which is not given, less 80,000. So we have here the 100,000 is equal to 40% multiplied by sales less 80,000. Same sa pag-compute ganina, ang 80,000 atong i-add sa 100,000, which is 180,000. So after adding 100,000 sa 80,000, ang next equation is 180,000 is equal to 40% multiplied by the sales. So, kailangan man nato hanapon ang sales, we need to divide the 180,000 sa 40%. Ang sa slide na wala ang percent, sorry. So, 180,000 divided by 40% is equal to 450,000 nga sales. So, 450,000 nga sales ang kailangan nato ma-generate for us to earn the target profit of 100,000. For us to know if correct atong answer, we need to verify it na sa gilid. So, at ang ni result sa atong pag-verify is equal to 100,000, which is correct, which is the target profit nga 100,000. For the formula method, pare-pareho lang siya ganina sa equation method nga required ang sales. Pero naglahi sila sa formula. So for the formula, sa formula method, it is target profit plus fixed expenses divided by the CM ratio. Nga mo equal siya sa peso sales to attain the target profit. So for the application, we have here the 100,000 for the target profit plus 80,000 for the fixed expenses divided by 40% nga contribution margin ratio. So na ang solving sa baba, ang blue, it is equal to 450,000. 450,000 nga unit sales to attain the target profit nga 100,000. We have here the last method, which is the percentage method. The formula for this method is target profit percent is equal to fixed expenses plus target profit divided by contribution margin multiplied by 100%. The problem for this is, suppose Fifth Racing wants to compute the peso sales required to earn a target profit of 100,000. For the application, target profit percent is equal to 80,000 plus 100,000 divided by 100,000 multiplied by 100%. So the target profit percent is equal to 180%, and this means that the company requires 180% of its current sales in order to obtain the target profit nga 100,000. We have here a quick check if nakasabot kitang tanan. Here is the situation. Jolt is an espresso stand in the downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49 and the average variable expense per cup is $0.36. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. How many cups of coffee would have to be sold to attain target profit of $2,500 per month? You have to answer this without looking sa solution nga naa sa baba. For the solution for this problem, at ang gamitin nga method is formula method. Naa ang formula. So, the formula or the method come up with an answer equal to 3,363 cups.
Thank you, Ms. Orozco. Now, let's determine the level of sales needed to achieve a desired target profit. The equation and contribution margin methods can be used to determine the sales volume needed to achieve a target profit. Example: suppose Racing Bicycle Company wants to know how many bikes must be sold to earn a profit of 100,000 pesos. Cost volume profit equation method. Sales equals variable expenses plus fixed expenses plus profits. Sales is 500 pesos Q, variable expenses is 300 pesos Q, plus fixed expenses of 80,000 pesos, and profit is 100,000 pesos. Sales become 200 pesos because 500 minus 300 equals 200, plus fixed expenses 80,000 pesos, plus profit 100,000 pesos equals 180,000 pesos. So 180,000 pesos divided by sales 200 pesos Q equals 900 bikes. The contribution margin method can be used to determine that 900 bikes must be sold to earn the target profit of 100,000 pesos. Unit sales to attain the target profit equals fixed expenses plus target profit divided by unit contribution margin. Here is the solution. 80,000 pesos plus 100,000 pesos divided by 200 pesos equals 900 bikes. Quick check. Jolt is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49 and the average variable expense per cup is $0.36. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. How many cups of coffee would have to be sold to attain target profits of $2,500 per month? A. 3,363 cups. B. 2,212 cups. C. 1,150 cups. D. 4,200 cups. Here is the solution. Unit sales to attain the target profit equals fixed expenses plus target profit divided by unit contribution margin. Fixed expenses is 1,300 plus target profit of 2,500 divided by $1.49 minus $0.36 equals 3,363 cups. The margin of safety. If we assume that Fifth Racing Bicycle Company has actual sales of 250,000 pesos, given that we have already determined the break-even sales to be 200,000 pesos, the margin of safety is 50,000 pesos as shown below. Break-even sales in 400 units. Sales is 200,000 pesos. Less variable expenses 120,000, contribution margin 80,000, less fixed expenses 80,000, and the net operating income is 0. Actual sales in 500 units. Sales is 250,000 pesos, less variable expenses 150,000, contribution margin is 100,000, less fixed expenses of 80,000, and the net operating income is 20,000. The margin of safety can be expressed as 20% of sales, computed as 50,000 pesos divided by 250,000 pesos. The margin of safety can be expressed in terms of number of units sold. The margin of safety at Fifth Racing is 50,000 pesos and each bike sells for 500 pesos. Margin of safety in units equals 50,000 pesos divided by 500 equals 100 bikes. Quick check. Jolt is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49 and the average variable expense per cup is $0.36. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. 2,100 cups are sold each month on average. What is the margin of safety? A. 3,250 cups. B. 950 cups. C. 1,150 cups. D. 2,100 cups. Solution and margin of safety equals total sales minus break-even sales equals 2,100 cups minus 1,150 cups equals 950 cups. Solution in percent of margin of safety equals 950 divided by 2,100 equals 45%. Cost structure and profit stability. Cost structure refers to the relative proportion of fixed and variable costs in an organization. Managers often have some latitude in determining their organization's cost structure. There are advantages and disadvantages to high fixed cost or low variable cost and low fixed cost or high variable cost structures. Advantage. An advantage of high fixed cost structure is that income will be higher in good years compared to companies with lower proportion of fixed cost. Disadvantage. A disadvantage of a high fixed cost structure is that income will be lower in bad years compared to companies with lower proportion of fixed cost. Generally, companies with high fixed cost structure will show higher net income in good years than companies with lower fixed cost structures. Companies with low fixed cost structures enjoy greater stability in income across good and bad years.
Thank you, Miss Ruby. And for the next topic, it is all about operating leverage. And by this, we will be able to understand and learn how to compute the degree of operating leverage at a particular level of sales and explain how it can be used to predict changes in net operating income. So what is an operating leverage? An operating leverage is a measure of how sensitive net operating income is to percentage changes in sales. The degree of operating leverage is a measure at any given level of sales of how a percentage change in sales volume will affect profits. It is computed by dividing contribution margin by the net operating income. So as you can see on the data provided, the total contribution margin is 100,000 and we'll just have to divide it by the total net operating income, which is 20,000. So the total operating leverage is 5. With an operating leverage of 5, if racing increases its sales by 10%, then the net operating income would increase by 50%. And to get the total percent increase in profits, we'll just simply multiply the percentage increase in sales by the degree of operating leverage. So a 10% increase in sales would increase bike sales from the current level of 500 to 550. Look at the contribution margin income statement and notice that the income increased from $20,000 to $30,000. That 10% dollars increase in net income is a 50% increase. So it is true that the 10% increase in sales results in a 50% increase in net income. And take note guys that this is really a powerful information for a manager to have. To further understand this concept, let's take this another example. Jolt is an espresso stand in a downtown office building. The average selling price of a cup of coffee is $1.49 and the average variable expense per cup is $0.36. The average fixed expense per month is $1,300. 2,100 cups are sold each month on average. So what is the operating leverage? As you can see, the total contribution margin is $2,373 with a net operating income of $1,073. So we just have to divide the contribution margin from the net operating income. So probably the total operating leverage is 2.21. If sales now increases by 20%, by how much should net operating income increase? In order to get the total percentage increase in profit, we just have to multiply the percent increase in sales, which is 20%, to the degree of operating leverage, which is 2.21. So the total percent increase in profit is probably 44.20%. So moving on, the next topic will help us understand and learn how to compute the break-even point for a multi-product company and explain the effects of shifts in the sales mix on contribution margin and the break-even point. So what is a sales mix? A sales mix is a relative proportion in which a company's products are sold. Different products have different selling prices, cost structures, and contribution margins. When a company sells more than one product, of course, break-even analysis becomes more complex as the following example illustrates. Let's assume Racing Bicycle Company sells bikes and carts and that the sales mix between the two products remains the same. When a company sells more than one product, break-even analysis become more complex because of the relative mix of the products sold. Different products will have different selling prices, cost structures, and contribution margins. Let us expand the product line at Racing Bicycle Company and see what impact this has on break-even. We are going to assume that the sales mix between the products remains the same in our example. RBC's bikes and cart sales and profit data are as follows. The break-even in sales dollars is $352,697, and we calculate this in the normal way. We divide the total fixed expenses of $170,000 by the combined contribution margin ratio. We begin by allocating total break-even sales revenue to the two products. 45% of the total is assigned to the bikes, while 55% to the carts. The variable cost by product are determined by multiplying the variable expenses percent times the assigned revenue. The contribution margin is the difference between the assigned revenue and the variable expenses. Once again, we subtract fixed expenses from the combined total contribution margin for the two products. Because we used a rounded contribution margin percent, we have a rounding error of $176. So obviously, the more products a company has, the more complex the break-even analysis becomes. Using different methods to calculate the break-even points will result in slightly different answers due to rounding differences at different points of the calculations. In this example, the break-even percentage seems to provide a better estimation. So there are four key assumptions of cost-volume profit analysis. First, selling price is constant. Second, costs are linear and can be accurately divided into variable, such as constant per unit, and fixed, such as constant in total elements. In multi-product companies, the sales mix is constant. And lastly, in manufacturing companies, inventories do not change. Generally, CVP analysis is based on a simple model of how profits respond to prices, cost, and volume. This model can be used to answer a variety of critical questions such as what is the company's break-even volume, what is its margin of safety, and what is likely to happen if specific changes are made in prices, cost, and volume. A CVP graph depicts the relationship between unit sales on the one hand and fixed expenses, variable expenses, total sales, and profits on the other hand. The profit graph is simpler than the CVP graph, and it shows how profits depends on sales. The CVP and profit graphs are useful for developing intuition about cost and profits respond to changes in sales. The contribution margin ratio is the ratio of the total contribution margin to total sales. This ratio can be used to quickly estimate what impact a change in total sales would have on net operating income. The ratio is also useful in break-even analysis. Break-even analysis is used to estimate how much sales would have to be to just break even. The unit sales required to break even can be estimated by dividing the fixed expense by the unit contribution margin. Target profit analysis is used to estimate how much sales would have to be to attain specified target profit. The unit sales required to attain the target profit can be estimated by dividing the sum of the target profit and fixed expenses by the unit contribution margin. The margin of safety is the amount by which the company's current sales exceeds break-even sales. The degree of operating leverage allows quick estimation of what impact a given percentage change in sales would have on the company's net operating income. The higher the degree of operating leverage, the greater is the impact on the company's profits. The degree of operating leverage is not constant. It primarily depends on the company's current level of sales. The profits of multi-product company are affected by its sales mix. Changes in the sales mix can affect the break-even point, margin of safety, and other critical factors. And that is all. Thank you.